So Jacob was 130 years old when he went to Egypt with the family. Well, I am 130. It's about time to go to Egypt. He lived there for 17 years. So of course. So he's going to be 147. Jacob is going to be 147. Abraham's going to be 110. Adam's going to have Seth when he's 150. Adam's going to live to be 190 years old, not looking a day over 35. He lived there for 17 years. He became very ill and he would soon die. Joseph took his two sons, Manasseh, and that's not the bad Manasseh, is it? There's two Manassehs in the Bible. One's good, or one's unknown, and the other one is evil as shit. Manasseh's evil as fucking Ephraim. To see their grandfather, Jacob sat up in bed, blessed his grandsons. He surprised Joseph by saying that the younger boy would be greater than the older one. What? That's ludicrous. So the whole family is here. The whole family. This is a blessing for each son. Genesis 48 to 49. So Jacob is in Egypt. He calls all of his sons to come and receive his blessing. The sons of Leah. He calls all of his sons. All of his kids. He's like Herschel Walker. He's got hoes in different area codes. He's got Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah and Rachel. So he's got 4 wives. Jacob has 4 wives, but all the sons are there in Egypt with Jacob when he's 147 years old, because this is all true. This is written by God. This is written by God, and this is all what? This is Noah's people or Adam's people? Adam and Eve, all their people had to be wiped out. That's what you had Noah for, right? And then you have to wipe out everybody when Jesus or Moses. Moses comes, you always have these brand new heroes, right? You got Adam, and then you have Noah, then you have Abraham, and then you have Jacob and Joseph, and then you have Benjamin and Dan. So Jacob called all of his sons to come receive his blessing, the sons of Leah. These are all the names of the sons. These are the 12 tribes of the Israelites. These are the ancient Hebrew Israelites. The whole family's here. All the 12 tribes are here. The sons of Leah: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Bilhah, the slave wife, Dan, and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, the slave wife, Gad and Asher. And the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. Jacob understood his sons and gave each one the blessing that was just right for him. Finally, Jacob asked his sons to take his body back to Canaan and bury him in the family burial grave. Then he laid down and died. Joseph cried with sorrow over his father's death. Pharaoh gave him permission to take Jacob's body to Canaan. When I think about the history epics of the world, you got pictures, right? That's about, 1850s, and then you got videotape, was it 1930s? But before pictures and videotape, you only had words, and then archaeology, pottery, and buildings, and inscriptions on buildings, and sea form, and then you got DNA. DNA is actually pretty, we know that there's a historical scientific atom. There's one man 50,000 years ago that shares a trait with every man on the planet. And they call that the scientific atom. So there is a scientific atom, but all this is bullshit. All this is just absolute horseshit. Who the fuck? It's like, grow the fuck up. How the fuck can you believe some of this dumb shit? And then Jacob lived to be 147 because he had universal health care. They had really good medicine back in the Bronze Age. Really good medicine. Much better medicine than today. The technology back in the Bronze Age when it came to medicine was so much better than it is for today. That's why Adam could live to be over 900 years old. Hey, look, with God, everything's possible. The Alpha and the Omega, the Pepper Jack and the Colby. But Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. I knew a Zebulun. I knew a Zebulon, actually, so they misspell these names. Reuben, like the Reuben sandwich. Simeon, no Simeon. Levi, like Levi jeans. Judah, is that Judas? And then, of course, Dan. And you got Joe and Ben, right? So Joseph and Benjamin and Dan. But Naphtali. So the sons of Bilhah, the slave's wife, is Naphtali. and Dan, the sons of Leah, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And then you got Joseph and Benjamin and Dan. And then there's Dan. What's Dan up to? Just danning around, just being a damn, not a thing. What's Dan been up to? Not a damn thing. The sons of Zilpah, so Zilpah, Bilhah. Hey, don't talk about my wives. You keep my wives' names out of your mouth. Keep all my wives' names out of your mouth. Joseph's brothers thought that Joseph might turn against them now that Jacob was no longer alive. Oh no, Jacob's no longer alive. Joseph is the new patriarch. But Joseph said he would never do that to his brothers. You thought that you were harming me when I was a boy, but God turned that harm into good for all of us. Joseph is going to die in Egypt. He lived in Egypt all the rest of his life, and then he died, and he asked that his bones be taken back to Canaan, or Canaan, Canaan, Canaan. They went back to Canaan. 400 years went by before that actually happened. So, I mean, why make it this shit? Some of this shit, it's like, it's too fucking dumb and specific for it not to be true. Meanwhile, Joseph's body stayed in Egypt in a coffin until they took his body. So that's, you know, people do that at times, right? There's only one main point that I want to make, essentially. Well, there's 2 points. Reuben sandwiches, Levi jeans, Zebulun, you misspelled it, and Dan, what are you even doing there in the family, Dan? Joe, Ben, and Dan should have just, like, separated immediately. No, Gad, you're not like Dan at all, Asher, Naphtali. And to be honest with you, I'm on the side of the sons of the slave wives. Zilpah and Bilhah, why they got the ha's at the end, and then why do we have slaves? What the fuck? And then, you know, not only are we allowing slavery and oppression, not only are we sleeping with everybody's, you know, wives and taking people's sheep and whatever, lighting sheep on fire, God tells you to kill your kid, all this insane shit. And then God understood his sons and gave each one of the blessings that was just right for him. I thought that big thing where Jacob stole the blessing from Esau, not just but once, but twice, lying, saying he had Esau's perfume on him, and then tricked Esau when he had stew and he was hungry. Just give me your birthright. Here's my birthright. Okay, you got my birthright. Can I have the stew now? But Papa, he gave me his birthright. So that deceiving son of a bitch. So my first point is, what a bunch of stupid names, huh? These names are hilarious and funny. And I am on the side of Zilpah and Bilhah. Whatever happened to Leah and Rachel? Probably nothing, right? Bilhah and Zilpah, they made a comeback. Gad and Asher, Dan and Naphtali. Those are my 4 favorite ancient Hebrew Israelites. And I'll make 3 points. Because of the shit Kanye said. I grew up as a Christian. Grew up Catholic. Grew up with the 10 Commandments. With the nuns at St. Joseph Church in Walton, Kentucky, northern Kentucky. So I've been confirmed and baptized and did the confirmation and first communion, and haven't done my holy orders or my marriage sacrament yet. Yes, 7 sacraments and 10 commandments, and God always was. How? You know, that used to bug the shit out of me. God always was. Space goes on to infinity, like I would try to fathom it. Okay, so once you get to the edge of the, and then there's more. And then it just keeps going. It never stops. So, what a bunch of bullshit. What a bunch of bullshit. Seems like the lesson is, be like Herschel Walker. Go out and just spread your seed all over the place. Do whatever it takes to make sure your tribe succeeds, even if it means deceiving your family. Saul, David, Solomon. Because of what Kanye West has been saying, I think it's So I read the Bible, loving the Bible, and adopted every fucking thing about the Bible. Then I grew up and then read the Bible to go after Christianity, and I read enough to say, okay, the Bible's horse shit. But now Kanye's doing his shit. It's like, there's good and bad in all groups of people. Just because you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim, just because you have a certain religion, there's good and bad in each one of those groups of people. I'm not a religious person, I'm an atheist. But to deny that a good person can also be a Christian or, something else, I think you can be both a Christian. I've met a lot of shitty Christians. I wish Christians were more like Jesus. And actually, so now I'm reading the Bible to be respectful of the Jews, Judaism. Because if Catholicism is the conservative religion of Christianity in America, Catholicism's like been there forever, right? The Protestants started reading their own shit and they tried to be like the Catholics, but they could never really get it right. But if you actually want to be a conservative when it comes to religion, it's not the Baptists, it's not the evangelicals, it's not the Mormons. It would be the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrew Israelites. It would be the Jews. So if you want to be a conservative, then you should believe in Judaism. And actually, there's a lot more stuff here in Judaism when I think about the history of Judaism, when I think about how the Jews kept a hold of their history and they kept a hold of their people. And when we look at archaeology and history, I mean, you got the Egyptians and you have the Sumerians, so you have the Chinese, you have civilizations that were older than the Jews. But because the Jews kept writing their shit down and then passing it on and then writing it down, and then they kept such a meticulous notes of their bloodlines, and they kept passing, this is who we are, this is what we are. We talk about them, compare and contrast to them when it comes to comparing the Egyptian and the Sumerians and the Chinese civilizations. Because we think we know a whole bunch. They wrote a whole bunch of shit down. So when it comes to the epics, you got, words, videotape, pictures, archaeology, there's DNA too. But back when they just had words, there's going to be propaganda, there's going to be bullshit, there's a lot of magic and miracles, and frankly, that comes to my last point, that I don't want to believe in any of this shit. I eventually fall for David because I love David and Goliath, that story, so much. So I want David to be real and Saul and Solomon. So I went to read the Bible, the Old Testament, to appreciate the Jews. And it starts out with the 12 tribes of Israel. That's the first thing you need to get with Genesis. Then there's Moses and the 10 Commandments. But I don't believe in any of that shit because of the very beginning. Motherfucker, you're going to sit there and try to tell me Adam and Eve and the fucking snake. Oh, Eve was talking to a snake and the snake said, don't eat the apple. And then the apple talked to the Eve and the Eve ate the apple and the apple ate the Eve. And then that was bad. God didn't like any of this. God said, just, you can do whatever you want in this garden. Just don't go over there and touch that flower. Don't smell that rose over there. And then Eve went and smelled the rose immediately, and clearly the woman was at fault, and the woman was made with a rib, and God made the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh, and then Noah and the ark, and he hated everybody at Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, the original sin, right? You didn't do what God wanted, so you sons of bitches. All you fucking humans, the Catholics say that. Adam and Eve says that's original sin, so every person in the world is born with original sin according to Catholics. So you have to be baptized and repent and adopt Jesus, or you're just going to grow on with being some sort of Hittite. You want to be a Canaanite? That's some sort of Hittite? But you got Cain and Abel. What? They're giving fucking sacrifices to God, to what? Zeus? To fucking Jupiter? To Mercury? To Hermes? To the Sol Invictus? And then God doesn't like one over the other? Who the fuck, what, besides a child, could believe in any of this shit? They went to God and they burned they're burning their fucking, crops and their sheeps and this shit. But God doesn't like one over the other? How did God show favor over one over the other? I mean, I see an old bearded man, sitting on high, judging over everybody. But there is not an invisible man sitting up on high with a big-ass beard, judging everybody, just grinning at everybody. The Tower of Babel, they started building a fucking tower, and then God changed all the tongues and the languages so they couldn't understand. He didn't want humanity to get along. No wonder we're not getting along. We speak all the different languages, and why? We have skyscrapers, galore. In fact, you got Dubai that's got the biggest skyscraper. America's not number one anymore. So the Tower of Babel's a dumb story. God is getting jealous. They're trying to build this tower to get to God, but you'll never get to God. Don't even try. Having a skyscraper isn't just a testament to man, it's also a testament to God. Look at what we can fucking produce. Look at what we can accomplish. There's no Seth. Adam doesn't live to be 957 billion years old. Moses, Abraham, because of all the fucking lies in Genesis, I can't believe any of this shit. It's weird and specific, and they have names and dates and this and that. But it's been rewritten, translated. It's 2,000 years ago. It's in English. It was in Aramaic. It was in Hebrew. So Kanye's right that the story that just happened today gets rewritten, completely different that day. So if all we got is the words, we can only glean so much. And so I'm going to ignore the entire fucking Bible up to Saul, David, and Solomon. Solomon's temple, King David, King Saul. It all just seems like it was 3,000 years ago. It's 1000 AD. It just kind of hits all the right notes. And then everybody wants to trace their bloodlines back to David. How could he not be, real? But I've heard that, Saul, David, and Solomon's not real either. But basically, because of the lies of Genesis in the very beginning, don't lie to me, motherfuckers. Don't fucking lie to me. Oh, yeah, God clapped his hands and then poof, there's the sky. Fuck you. God farted and there, there's the Big Bang, right? Did God fart the Big Bang or did Big Bang fart out God? Is God just a fart? Is God just a figment of your imagination? I wrestle with God in the sense of nature's God, physics is God, math is God. Mathematics is the language of God and Creole. Physics, mathematics, geometry, logic, reason. These are God-like tools. So I love David and Goliath. 1000 BC. It seems reasonable to me. And maybe eventually I'll change my mind on that because I'm splitting the difference. Because before I said the Bible's just total horse shit and just threw it away. Now I'm saying there might be something to all this. There might be something to all this. It makes me a little bit jealous. It makes me think I need to write my own bloodlines of my family. Because, I can never be Jewish, right? It's about the bloodlines, right? You have to be it has to be the mother, which is weird. Because Joseph came from the house of David. But because of the virgin birth, and if it's a virgin birth, then that means Jesus has none of the bloodlines of Joseph. Therefore, he's got none of the bloodlines of David. There's too many inconsistencies, contradictions, illogical fucking, just a bunch of nonsense. So much fucking nonsense, I ignore most of the fucking Bible. But why write so many of these words if it's of no meaning? People wrote some shit down. Can we glean something from that? I think so. People wrote some shit down on some shit, and we can figure something out about that. But I just want to make that last point. Don't fucking lie to me, Genesis, you lying sons of bitches. Oh, yeah, right. And then Jacob went over here and did this and did that. Yeah, right, I bet you Jacob just straight up just said, hey, Papa, he's a piece of shit. Just give me the blessing. He gave him the blessing and then made up this other shit to make him seem nicer. This is Israel, right? You can't make Jacob seem like such a fucking asshole just stealing his brother's birthright. You know that birthright that you have? It's mine. Well, then it's not really a birthright now, is it? If you could just take it like that. They mentioned something about the Passion on the book of Mark. There's 16 chapters. It's only 30 pages. It's the shortest gospel, so I recommend it. If you're going to read one of the gospels, read Mark. It's the first one, and it's the shortest one. The book of John is alien compared to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They're apparently known as the synoptic gospels or some shit, but Matthew, Mark, and Luke are kind of very similar, and then the book of John is like, where do you get that shit at, John? Where did you come up with that, John? Book of John? Who the hell are you? Were you written by aliens? Are you the same one that built the pyramids? Mark was the first. They copied off of Mark. And they talked about the Passion. I don't know what the Passion is. Herod's daughter said she wanted the head of John the Baptist. Papa, I'll give you one thing. Herodias or whatever. The daughter said, I want the head of John the Baptist. If I was to give you one wish, in all the entire world, what would it be? The head of John the Baptist. And so Herod Agrippus is going to chop off the head of John the Baptist. And that's foreshadowing. John the Baptist gets arrested as soon as Jesus starts his ministry. So those are my few points there. Don't fucking lie to me. I can't fucking believe shit. And then, you know what? David's only 3,000 years ago, so you'd think somebody would have known something. Somebody would have said something. But if we can't find corroborating evidence, then perhaps I should just throw out David and maybe, I don't want to keep on looking at Jesus over and over again. Let's look around Jesus. Let's look like 10 years before Jesus and then 10 years after Jesus. That's my Christmas. I'm going to look at the historicity of the dawn of man. The way I understand mankind is that 50,000 years ago we broke out of Africa. 14,000 years ago we got to America. And then the grip servers got to America 1869. So from 1869 to 14,000 years ago, I'm not for sure exactly what happened. I believe there was a Haitian Revolution, American Revolution, French Revolution. I personally don't even like going back farther than 1804. There's no pictures. Videotape is the best goddamn evidence ever. DNA is interesting. There's other archaeology. There's relative dating with the tree rings and shit like that. But picture, videotape, these are epics. These are epochs. So for the longest time before pictures, 1860s, and videotape, 1920s, words was all we had. Words and archaeology. So could they have used propaganda and rhetoric? Definitely. They definitely used that. They didn't know there was going to be pictures and videotape, so they thought they were going to get away with just saying something and then making it true. It was carved in stone. Could it have been a lie? Could they have, had 99 truths and one lie? And just because you carve it in stone, they took a lot of time for it. But who the hell had money and time for that? That's the rich. And we're going to believe the words of the rich? They say the conquerors are the ones who write history. Mark 12:31. I love this quote. Mark 12:31 or 10:31. The first will be last and the last will be first. So the Bible's got a lot of pretty poetry. Pretty poetry. And if you ever need to meditate, just sit down and read. You don't need the Bible to read. In fact, the best argument against the Bible is to read the Bible. Away in the main, no crib for that little Lord Jesus. Yeah, so Genesis 1-5 just pisses me off so fucking much. Yeah, Jacob goes over here and then he meets a guy, Laban and fucking Bethuel or some shit. He kind of fucks the guy over, but the guy kind of fucked him over. He had all those kids with Leah because he wanted to marry Rachel. He worked for 7 years and then he tricked him and said, okay, now you get to be with Leah. And he goes, wait a second, I want to be with Rachel. No, you said Leah, no, Rachel. Okay, work for another 7 years. I give you Leah. And then after another 7, so he stole 14 years of his life. Eventually, he gets to be with Rachel. And then eventually, he has Joseph and Benjamin. And we're going to follow this epic with Joseph. Who knows what happened to Gad and Asher? And Dan and Naphtali. If Dan and Naphtali carried the story on, then I'd be excited. The slave wife, the children of the slave wife, I'm rooting for I'm rooting for Dan and Naphtali and Gad and Asher. But of course, and there's a lot about the favorites too, right? Joseph is my favorite, and then they're all like, oh my God, you're Papa's favorite. We hate you. But there's like a whole bunch more of us than there is of him. If we just stuck together and had solidarity, we don't need anybody telling us what to do. We can govern our own lives, get together, talk about how the things are working, and just govern our lives by shooting the shit, figuring out what people are doing, and do your thing. Make your money. Get together, and then do your thing even better. Get them to do their thing better, and make more money. And get some power!